So it is Friday evening,
Mm.
and you are standing in your kitchen,
Right.
and the overhead light feels just a little too clinical.
Oh, I know that light.
Yeah, a little too bright for this hour. And the only sound in the entire room is that low, steady, mechanical hum of the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
And you are physically exhausted. Like, not just the standard end of the day tired, but a deep, heavy, lactic acid kind of ache.
Yeah, the kind that settles right at the base of your neck.
Exactly. Just pulling your shoulders down toward the floor. And all you want in the world, literally the only thing that sounds remotely appealing to your nervous system, is to put on your oldest, softest sweatpants.
Oh, absolutely.
Turn off every single light in the house and just sleep for 14 straight hours.
That sounds incredible in that moment.
It does, but then your phone screen glows on the granite counter.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it buzzes. Then it buzzes again. And you know what it is? It is the group chat.
Of course it is.
They are finalizing plans for a loud, crowded night out. And as you stare at those glowing speech bubbles, you know, this heavy, cold knot of guilt forms right in the pit of your stomach.
It's a very specific, very physical kind of dread, isn't it?
It really is.
Because that knot in your stomach isn't just some metaphor. It is an immediate physiological response.
Mm.
Your brain is anticipating this massive conflict between your biological need for rest and, well, your deeply ingrained social conditioning.
Right, exactly. And here is the actual hook of the whole thing. Here's what you actually do in that moment.
You go out anyway.
You go it anyway. You completely ignore the aching shoulders. You
Yeah.
suppress all that exhaustion.
Yeah.
And fast forward 3 hours and you find yourself standing in a loud venue at 2 a.m. Your shoes are literally sticking to the floor with every single step.
Woof, the sticky floor.
Right. And the bass from the music is vibrating so aggressively that it actually feels uncomfortable on your chest cavity.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. And there you are, smiling, nodding, just pretending to have the absolute time of your life.
Wow.
And why? Because you are terrified of disappointing your friends. You're terrified of being left out or being seen as the one who brings the mood down.
Right. You're terrified of somehow failing at the unspoken expectations of your social circle.
Exactly.
And, you know, that feeling is profoundly isolating. You can be surrounded by 100 people vibrating to that exact same bass line and feel entirely alone.
Completely alone.
Because the version of you that is in that room isn't the authentic you. It is a highly curated avatar performing a role.
That is such a good way to put it. An avatar.
Yeah. And what you are describing, this scenario, is the absolute starting point for our exploration today.
Right.
That phenomenon of forcing yourself into spaces, whether physical spaces like a sticky-floored club or emotional spaces in your relationships and career, just to maintain an impossible standard.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is, and it's a universal human experience, but we very rarely stop to examine the actual mechanics of why we subject ourselves to it.
And that is the core mission for our conversation today. We are looking closely at the underlying psychology, based on our source material, to understand why we push ourselves to these punishing, impossible standards.
Exactly.
Whether we are doing it in our social lives, in our corporate careers, or just inside the quiet, private echo chamber of our own minds.
Which is usually the loudest place.
Oh, without a doubt. So we are going to deconstruct this exhausting internal pressure. And more importantly, we are going to look at the psychological frameworks that allow us to transform this intense, relentless drive.
Right, from something that slowly destroys our battery into our most authentic strength.
Yeah. So to do that, where do we even start?
Well, we have to require a fundamental shift in how we view our own internal dialogue. Because right now, the vast majority of driven people are walking around with an internal drill sergeant.
An internal drill sergeant.
That is the most accurate archetype for it. This voice in our heads operates entirely on a binary all-or-nothing framework.
So there's no middle ground.
None. It is a cognitive trap. This drill sergeant demands a 10 out of 10 in absolutely every single area of your life simultaneously.
Okay, let's look at the actual mechanics of that. A 10 out of 10 everywhere. Because realistically, if you actually try to map that out on a whiteboard, it's a mathematical impossibility.
It is mathematically and biologically impossible.
Right.
Yet the expectation remains, you must be the most productive, innovative employee who never misses a deadline.
Okay.
You must be the most attentive, emotionally regulated, flawless partner. You must maintain peak physical fitness, curate a magazine-ready home, and be the most accommodating, always available friend.
I'm getting anxious just listening to that list.
Right. There is zero tolerance for a passing grade. A 7 out of 10 is processed by this internal voice as a complete and utter failure.
Which brings us to a really dark irony about this specific psychological profile.
Let's hear it.
Let's trace the life cycle of a goal under this drill sergeant mentality. Let's say you actually manage to pull it off temporarily. You ace a massive high-stakes project at work. You sacrificed your weekends. You slept maybe 4 hours a night.
Cortisol levels through the roof.
Exactly, through the roof. But you deliver a flawless, undeniable 10 out of 10. The client is thrilled. Your boss is thrilled. Does the brain actually register joy in that moment?
From a neurochemical standpoint.
Right.
Really.
Really?
Yeah. What you experience is not a sustained release of dopamine or serotonin associated with deep satisfaction.
It's just a fleeting, numb sensation of relief.
Yes.
And I really want to emphasize the word fleeting. The relief only lasts for about a microsecond, right? Because your brain immediately neutralizes the victory.
It does.
It says, well, of course you achieved that. That was the baseline expectation. That was simply what you were supposed to do.
Exactly. And then almost instantaneously, the goalpost moves.
The goalpost always moves.
It has to move because the internal drill sergeant does not operate on an economy of satisfaction. It operates on an economy of perpetual motion.
Wow. Perpetual motion.
Right. If you achieve the goal, the logic dictates that the goal was clearly too easy. Therefore, the next target must be significantly harder to prove your worth.
Mechanically, what is happening there, though? Like, why doesn't the brain just say, hey, good job, let's rest now?
It has to do with how the brain's reward circuitry adapts. When you attach your core identity and your fundamental worth to external achievement, the baseline for what triggers a dopamine response constantly resets.
Oh, I see.
It is a psychological phenomena known as the Hedonic Treadmill, but applied strictly to performance. You have to run faster and faster just to feel a baseline level of, okay.
Okay, I want to push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
Because the logical solution you hear from a lot of productivity spaces is, oh, just lower your expectations. Just accept being average in a few things.
Right, the classic advice.
Yeah. But if I'm operating in a highly competitive corporate environment, and I consciously decide to drop to a 5 out of 10 at work, my boss isn't going to applaud my healthy new boundaries.
No, they certainly are not.
I am going to get fired. So how does one actually manage this without ruining their livelihood?
That is the critical friction point, and it requires a nuanced understanding of energy allocation.
Okay.
The psychological framework we are examining doesn't suggest you become incompetent. It suggests you apply something akin to the Pareto principle.
The 80-20 rule.
Exactly, the 80-20 rule, to your life energy. Moving a project from an 8 out of 10 to a flawless 10 out of 10 often takes double the amount of energy, time, and stress.
Yeah, those last 2 points take everything out of you.
They do. And the human system simply cannot sustain maximum red line output indefinitely across all channels. Your adrenal glands will literally exhaust themselves.
So it's about strategic incompetence.
Well, I prefer the term strategic allocation.
Fair enough.
You must learn to consciously, actively choose the specific high-impact areas of your life where you truly want and need to be an 8 or a 9. You allocate your premium energy there. The flip side, which is the hardest pill to swallow for the driven mind, is that you must grant yourself radical, unshakable permission to be a 5 or a 6 in the areas that do not serve your core values.
So if your career and your immediate family are your 9s, then maybe having a perfectly organized garage or attending every single peripheral social event.
Like the 2 a.m. club.
Exactly, the 2 a.m. sticky floored club. Maybe that has to become a guilt-free 5.
Precisely. A 5 or a 6 is functionally adequate for things that are outside your core priorities. But to the driven mind, dropping to a 5 feels like a threat to their survival.
Let's dig into that perceived threat. Why are we so terrified of dropping from a 10 to a 5? What is the actual nature of this rigid, relentless force inside of us?
That's a great question.
Because society has a very specific, usually negative way of framing this drive, doesn't it?
It does. Traditionally, society and even early psychological models looked at this intense drive, this relentless pursuit of high standards, commonly labeled as perfectionism, as a pathology. It's treated as a toxic trait, a heavy emotional burden, or a behavioral disease that needs to be, quote-unquote, cured.
Cured, yeah. The prevailing cultural message is that we need to fix it, shrink it down, and just learn to care less.
Exactly.
We hear it constantly in casual conversation. People say, oh, just relax, don't take it so seriously. You just need to chill out.
which frankly is the most infuriating advice you can give to someone whose nervous system is wired this way.
Oh, it makes you want to pull your hair out.
It is infuriating because it denies their fundamental nature. The paradigm shift we need to explore here is that this intense drive is not a disease.
Okay.
It is not a flaw in your character. It is an immense dynamic energy source.
An energy source. I really want to pause on that for a second because it reframes the entire conversation. We aren't dealing with a virus.
No.
We are dealing with a power plant.
Exactly. You cannot cure yourself of who you are, nor should you want to.
Right.
The drive itself, the capacity for deep focus, the desire for excellence, the vision to see how things could be improved, that is not the core problem.
So what is the problem?
The problem is exclusively how that high voltage energy is being channeled and managed.
Wow. It makes me think of fluid dynamics.
How so?
Think about water. Water is a completely neutral force of nature. It has absolutely no moral alignment.
Right.
When its kinetic energy is channeled properly, it can spin turbines, generate electricity for millions of people, or beautifully carve out a magnificent canyon over centuries.
Yes.
But if that exact same volume and energy of water lacks boundaries, if the dam breaks, it becomes a destructive flood that completely wipes out a village overnight.
That's a perfect image.
The raw energy of the water didn't change at all. The only variable was the container, the boundaries, the way the force was directed.
That is a highly accurate mechanical analogy. Your internal drive is that neutral high voltage current. When you use this intense energy to punish yourself, when you direct it inward to berate yourself for a minor email typo, or to force yourself into social situations that actively drain your battery, it's maladaptive.
It's the flood destroying the village.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you build strong cognitive banks for that river,
Right.
when you use that exact same energy to aggressively advocate for your own health, to build systems that support your values, to pursue mastery in a subject you love,
Then it's adaptive.
then it is profoundly adaptive. It becomes your greatest advantage.
Okay, mechanically speaking, how does someone actually rebuild those banks?
Good question.
Because earlier I mentioned the common advice of, just lower your expectations. If this drive is a permanent energy source, does that mean I don't have to artificially lower my standards to be happy?
You absolutely do not have to lower your standards for excellence.
Wait, really?
Really. People who successfully manage this psychological profile do not suddenly decide they want to produce mediocre work.
Yeah.
They still desire greatness.
Okay, so what changes?
What they systematically change is their emotional response to failure.
Oh, they decouple the failure from their identity.
Yes. From a neurobiological perspective, they undergo neuroplastic rewiring.
How does that work?
Usually when a highly driven person misses a mark, their amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, lights up as if they're in physical danger.
Right, the alarm bells go off.
Exactly. That is what unleashes the internal drill sergeant. But the recovering-driven mind trains the prefrontal cortex to intervene.
Okay.
When they miss the mark, instead of a threat response, they respond with analytical curiosity. The high standard remains fully intact, but the brutal emotional self-punishment is completely neutralized.
That is fascinating. So the standard stays at a 10.
Right.
But if you hit a 7, the internal dialogue shifts from, oh, I'm worthless, to, that is fascinating data.
Exactly.
Why did that happen, and how do we adjust the system for next time?
Precisely. It shifts from a moral judgment to a mechanical adjustment.
Now, if this drive is an underlying energy, it obviously doesn't look identical in every single person, right?
No, not at all.
Because I know how my anxiety and drive manifest, but it probably looks entirely different for someone else.
It manifests in highly distinct ways based on early environment, temperament, and coping mechanisms. We can actually categorize this driven energy into 5 specific psychological profiles based on the analysis.
5 profiles.
Yes, it is absolutely not a monolithic experience.
I really want to spend a good amount of time walking through these 5 faces of the driven mind.
Let's do that.
Because understanding the specific mechanics of your own profile is, the first step to building those boundaries we just talked about.
It absolutely is. Let's start with the first archetype. We begin with what we call the classic.
The classic. Okay, so this is the individual who is incredibly reliable, highly organized, and absolutely loathes unpredictability in any form.
They despise it. They don't just prefer a plan. They derive deep neurological safety from the plan.
Safety, that's a strong word.
It's accurate, though. For the classic, organizing their external environment is a mechanism for mitigating internal ambient anxiety.
Ah,
Think about someone rearranging their physical space. They won't just place books on a shelf to get them out of the way.
yeah.
No, they will dedicate an entire hour to arranging a single bookshelf perfectly.
Wow.
They will smooth out the dog-eared pages, align the spines so they are perfectly flush with the edge of the wood, and categorize them by subject or color.
And they do not hide this behavior, do they?
Not at all. They wear their rigorous organization as a badge of honor, a proof of their competence.
Because in their mind, if the external world is ordered, the internal world cannot collapse.
Exactly.
But then we contrast that with the second profile, which is a fundamentally different expression of drive.
Right, the intense.
The intense.
The intense profile is laser-focused on efficiency and the ultimate goal, and they are completely, relentlessly unfiltered in their pursuit of it.
So they don't care about the bookshelf.
They do not care about the aesthetics of the bookshelf at all. They care about how fast they can retrieve the information from the book.
Okay, to give a visceral, real-world example of the intense.
Please do.
Picture the boarding process of a commercial airplane.
Go, boy.
The intense person gets on that plane, and they have a singular burning objective, right?
Which is?
To achieve physical comfort and sensory silence as rapidly as humanly possible.
Yes.
They want their carry-on perfectly stowed, their noise-canceling headphones activated, and their screen set up instantly.
Immediately.
And they have absolutely zero tolerance for the chaotic, inefficient, bumbling nature of the general public boarding a flight.
They really don't.
They are watching people block the aisle, fumbling to put oversized bags in the overhead bin. And internally, or honestly, sometimes very externally, they are just vibrating with a physical hot frustration.
Mechanically, what is happening there is a mismatch in cognitive processing speeds.
Oh, interesting.
The intense individual processes spatial and logistical information very quickly, and they experience physical discomfort when forced to operate at the slower pace of the group.
Physical discomfort.
Yes. If this trait goes unmanaged, this unfiltered drive easily alienates the people around them. They are often perceived as harsh, arrogant, or overly demanding.
I can see that.
However, if that same intensity is managed with emotional intelligence, they become highly magnetic, effective leaders.
Because they get things done.
Exactly. They're the individuals who can cut through bureaucratic noise and execute when everyone else is paralyzed by indecision.
Which perfectly sets up the third profile.
Yeah.
And this one connects directly to the visceral scenario we opened the show with.
The relational.
The relational.
The relational profile is driven entirely by connection and social cohesion rather than tasks or efficiency.
Okay.
They possess extraordinarily high empathy, but they are constantly haunted by an internalized, highly critical question.
Which is?
Who do you think you are to take up space?
That's heavy.
It is.
It is essentially a fawn trauma response masquerading as politeness, isn't it?
That's a very accurate way to put it.
They want to please everyone in the room. And more than that, they go to great lengths to hide their effort.
Yes.
They want to appear as though managing everyone's emotions is just naturally effortless for them, so they never make anyone else feel burdened.
Precisely.
The person standing in the club at 2 a.m. with their shoes stuck to the floor, suppressing their own exhaustion.
That is the textbook relational.
They are suffering through an environment that actively harms their nervous system just to keep the peace.
Right. Abandoning their own biological needs to ensure their friends feel supported.
Why do they do it mechanically?
For the relational, a failure in social connection, or the perception that they have disappointed someone, registers in the brain as a threat to their core identity.
Wow.
They conflate being useful to others with being worthy of love.
That is profound. Okay, now the fourth profile is one that often seems counterintuitive to the concept of high drive.
The procrastinator.
Now, anyone who has studied even a little bit of psychology knows the basic premise that procrastination is not a time management issue.
Right, it's an emotion regulation issue.
Exactly. But I want to explore the specific mechanics of why the driven mind freezes. Why does the drive lead to total paralysis instead of hyperaction?
It comes down to cognitive load and the fear of negative evaluation. The driven procrastinator is actually a 360-degree visionary.
Meaning what?
When presented with a project, their brain immediately maps out every single possible angle, every potential pitfall, every future requirement, and the massive amount of effort it will take to achieve a flawless 10 out of 10.
Oh, I see.
Because they see the entirety of the mountain at once, the prefrontal cortex becomes completely overwhelmed.
They experience Cognitive perfectionism.
Yes.
It is this overwhelming, paralyzing need to understand the entire architecture of a problem before they are willing to lay a single brick.
Exactly.
So they freeze, they sit at their desk, staring at a blank document, armed with a brilliant, complex plan, doing absolutely nothing.
Because the real-world conditions are never flawless enough to initiate action.
Right. They're waiting for a surge of perfect clarity and motivation that simply does not exist.
Exactly. Their high standards prevent them from allowing a messy, imperfect first draft to exist.
And finally, we have the fifth profile.
The messy.
The messy. It sounds like an oxymoron for a highly driven person, honestly.
It does, but it maps perfectly onto how dopamine works.
Okay, explain that.
These are the novelty seekers. They heavily romanticize the concept of new beginnings. They are addicted to the blank page, the startup phase, the fresh whiteboard. They fundamentally reject rigid corporate hierarchy or traditional structures.
If you observe their physical environment, it usually perfectly mirrors their internal cognitive state, doesn't it?
Usually, yes. Their workspace is decentralized and chaotic.
Yeah.
It's covered in half-finished sketches, open books, sticky notes, and probably 5 different beverages.
At least 5.
Right. And they throw themselves into new endeavors with bright-eyed, infectious optimism that is fueled by the dopamine rush of the new.
But the mechanical failure happens when the initial dopamine hit wears off.
Exactly.
The project transitions from the exciting initiation phase to the mundane maintenance phase.
Yes. And because their energy is scattered across 10 brilliant, unfinished ideas, they lack the executive function to follow through.
They struggle immensely to cross the finish line because the finish line is boring compared to the starting line.
Exactly. And what is vital here is the realization that comes from identifying your specific type.
Right.
Whether you are the classic seeking safety and order, the intense seeking efficiency, the relational seeking connection, the procrastinator paralyzed by the big picture, or the messy chasing the spark of initiation.
Yeah.
Realizing your type proves that you aren't fundamentally broken or uniquely defective.
Yeah.
You are just operating on a very specific neurological operating system.
You aren't failing at being a normal person. You are just a procrastinator who needs to mechanically learn how to lower the barrier to entry.
Exactly.
Or a relational who needs to learn how to tolerate the discomfort of setting a boundary. But, bringing all this internal architecture out into the real world, how does this wiring actually affect our external reality?
It affects it profoundly.
Specifically, how does it dictate the way we connect with the people around us?
Well, that transitions us right into the concept of the social mirror.
The social mirror.
Because this intense, internalized drive profoundly and often destructively impacts our interpersonal relationships.
Oh, so?
There is a deeply painful realization that emerges when examining these profiles. The sheer volume of connections does not equate to intimacy.
Yeah.
Having more friends absolutely does not equal less loneliness.
That is a really harsh truth. You can have a flawlessly curated social calendar, be invited to every dinner party, be surrounded by people all weekend.
And still go to bed feeling entirely unseen and deeply isolated.
Why does the driven mind struggle so much with genuine connection?
Because the driven mind unconsciously applies that exact same all-or-nothing 10 out of 10 framework to human relationships.
Oh, we apply the drill sergeant to our friends.
Exactly. We tend to engage in friendships with a covertly transactional mindset.
Covertly transactional.
Yes, the driven person will give 100% of themselves to a friend. They will give their time, their emotional bandwidth, and their fierce, unquestioning loyalty.
And unconsciously, they expect the other person to reciprocate with 100% back.
In the exact same currency, at the exact same intensity.
I see the mechanical flaw there immediately. We assume that because we are willing to drop everything and drive to the airport at 3 a.m. for them, they inherently share that exact same operating system.
Right.
But shouldn't friendships be somewhat reciprocal?
Reciprocity is healthy. Expecting a clone of your own intense behavior is not. When the friend acts differently, when they take 12 hours to respond to a text message because they are overwhelmed, or when they don't treat your career milestone with the same life-or-death intensity that you treated theirs, the driven mind doesn't just register it as a casual disappointment.
How does it register it?
They register it as a profound personal betrayal.
Wow. We interpret their different baseline of functioning as a deliberate withdrawal of love.
Yes.
We think, well, if they really cared, they would act exactly like I do.
Exactly.
But the reality is, expecting everyone to communicate, process emotions, and demonstrate loyalty in the exact same high-voltage way that you do is just a recipe for constant, agonizing heartbreak.
It creates a dynamic where you are constantly keeping a silent mental scorecard in a game that the other person doesn't even realize they are playing.
That sounds exhausting for everyone involved.
It is. And this inevitably leads to a phenomenon that is heavily analyzed in the psychological frameworks we were discussing,
Which is
the friendship rupture or the friendship breakup.
the friendship breakup. You know, the psychological pain of a friendship breakup is something we as a society are remarkably ill-equipped to handle.
We really are.
We have endless cultural scripts for how to navigate a romantic split.
Right.
There are thousands of pop songs, movies, and established rituals for a romantic breakup. You lean on your friends, you take time off, you grieve. But there is practically no cultural infrastructure for losing a platonic best friend.
And yet, neuroimaging shows that social rejection activates the exact same neural pathways in the anterior cingulate cortex as physical pain.
Physical pain.
Yes. Losing a close friend or feeling a social circle slowly, quietly ice you out can ache far more deeply than a romantic split.
Why is that?
It carries a unique type of shame. The internal drill sergeant immediately launches an inquisition.
Oh, I bet.
It asks, what is fundamentally wrong with my character that this person no longer wishes to associate with me?
It turns into a full autopsy of your own personality.
It really does.
But there is a much healthier, more realistic framework for viewing these ruptures, isn't there?
Yes, looking at relationships through the lens of seasons and circumstances.
Seasons and circumstances.
People very often enter our lives to serve a specific mutual need during a specific chapter.
Right.
Perhaps you bonded over the shared trauma of a high-pressure corporate environment, or you were navigating the isolating early years of parenthood together.
Or you simply lived in the same apartment building and shared geographical convenience.
Exactly. When the underlying circumstance shifts, someone changes careers, moves away, or heals from the trauma, the foundation of the bond naturally dissolves.
It isn't a failure.
No.
It is simply the natural mechanical rhythm of human life. The fact that the friendship ended does not retroactively erase the value of the connection when it was active.
Precisely. But the driven mind, because it is obsessed with permanent and perfection, views the end of a friendship as a personal failure that needs to be solved.
Instead of a season that has gracefully concluded.
Exactly. And this tendency to feel the end of a friendship so acutely, to process it as a deep physical wound, is inextricably linked to another biological trait that is highly prevalent in these driven profiles.
And what trait is that?
Sensory processing sensitivity.
High sensitivity. This is critical to unpack.
It really is.
Because the sensory reality of being a highly sensitive person is just overwhelming. It is the experience of instantly tearing up at a specific chord progression in a song playing in the grocery store aisle.
Or more practically, it is walking into a conference room, and before a single word of the meeting is spoken,
Oh, your nervous system immediately detects the heavy, unspoken tension between two coworkers.
exactly, you absorb the ambient emotional data of the room into your own body.
Culturally, especially in Western hyper-competitive environments, this biological trait is heavily stigmatized, isn't it?
Heavily. If your nervous system absorbs and reacts to this data, you are labeled as too soft or a crybaby.
Right, or you're told you need to rapidly grow a thicker skin to survive the real world.
Stop taking everything so personally.
Which is basically telling a radar dish to start picking up signals.
That's a great analogy. Exactly. But the framework completely flips this narrative.
How so?
Sensory processing sensitivity is not a character deficit. It is a profound evolutionary advantage.
An advantage.
Yes, it allows for advanced pattern recognition, deep empathetic leadership, and highly attuned intuition. It actually requires immense psychological fortitude to remain tender and perceptive in a society that constantly incentivizes emotional numbing.
Immense strength to remain tender. I love that. Let's build a mechanical analogy for this.
Okay.
It is like walking through life with the volume knob on your emotional receiver permanently glued at 11.
Yes, every single input is magnified.
The colors are brighter, the music is richer, the highs of human connection are totally transcendent.
But the lows, the rejections, the ambient anxieties are absolutely devastating to the nervous system.
That is the exact reality of the sensitive, driven mind.
It is.
And the objective here is not to figure out how to surgically disable the volume knob. You don't want to sever the wires, because if you numb the pain, you simultaneously numb the joy, the intuition, and the empathy.
That's exactly right.
So if the volume is permanently stuck at 11 and you can't break the dial, what is the mechanical solution?
You must acquire and utilize noise-canceling headphones.
Oh, I love this. Noise-canceling headphones as a mechanism for boundaries.
It is the perfect metaphor. You cannot control the ambient volume of the external world.
No.
People will be demanding, environments will be chaotic, and crises will occur. But you can control your exposure. Putting on the noise-canceling headphones mean developing the self-awareness to recognize when your nervous system is entering a state of overstimulation.
Right.
And giving yourself the unapologetic permission to step out of the room, to decline the invitation, to turn off the phone, and to protect your energy reserves without a shred of guilt.
All right, this brings us to the most vital part of the analysis.
Yes.
If the internal drill sergeant, the impossible 10 out of 10 standards, and the lack of energetic boundaries are the poison slowly draining us,
Which they are.
what is the actual synthesized antidote? How do we operationally put on these noise-canceling headphones and permanently alter the way we speak to ourselves?
The scientifically backed antidote, the actual mechanism that rewires this entire process, is radical self-compassion.
Radical self-compassion.
Yes. And it is crucial to state that this is not a soft, suffy buzzword.
Thank goodness.
Right. It is a rigorously studied psychological framework broken down into 3 specific, actionable neurological interventions.
I am extremely glad we are breaking this down into mechanical steps, because the phrase self-compassion sounds lovely on a greeting card, but it is incredibly vague.
It really is.
What does it actually look like to execute self-compassion on a random Tuesday afternoon when you have just completely botched a major presentation?
Okay. The first mechanical step is self-kindness.
Self-kindness.
This requires actively, consciously downregulating your sympathetic nervous system.
How do you do that?
Means acknowledging that you are experiencing psychological pain or embarrassment in that moment
Right.
without immediately launching into character assassination.
Right.
It is forcibly stepping down from the judge's bench in your own mind.
So mechanically, instead of the default pathway, which is, I am a complete imposter, I ruined the presentation, I'm going to lose my job, I am an idiot, you interrupt that circuit. You explicitly say, ouch, that mistake was highly visible and it feels incredibly uncomfortable. I am currently experiencing embarrassment.
Yes.
Yeah.
You objectively validate the emotional pain without attaching it to your inherent worth.
Okay, that makes sense.
The second step is common humanity.
Common humanity, which is essentially de-isolating the brain.
Exactly. The internal drill sergeant relies on isolation to maintain control.
Right.
It convinces your brain that you are an anomaly, that you are the only person in the entire organization who is struggling,
The only one who feels like a fraud.
the only one whose life is secretly messy.
Yeah.
Activating the concept of common humanity engages the mammalian care system. It reminds your brain, logically, that error is a universal feature of the human operating system.
Everyone is anxious, everyone is improvising, and everyone is making mistakes.
You are not uniquely defective. You are just participating in the standard human experience.
It instantly diffuses the shame, because shame cannot survive in a shared environment.
Precise.
And the third step.
The third step is mindfulness.
Okay.
In this specific context, mindfulness is the cognitive ability to observe the negative emotion, to let the embarrassment or anger exist in your physical body without allowing it to hijack your entire identity.
You observe the feeling, you do not become the feeling.
Exactly.
I want to insert a massive, crucial distinction here, because people, especially in corporate wellness spaces, constantly conflate true self-compassion with toxic positivity.
Oh, yes, Dick.
And they are completely different mechanisms.
They are entirely opposed to one another.
Toxic positivity is an emotional bypass.
Yes.
It is standing in the middle of a literal crisis, looking in the mirror and forcing yourself to chant, everything is perfect, good vibes only, every setback is a blessing.
Which is essentially gaslighting your own nervous system.
Exactly. You are refusing to acknowledge the reality of the negative data.
Right.
True self-compassion is relentlessly grounded in reality. It is looking at the situation and saying, this situation is awful, I made a massive, costly mistake, I am incredibly stressed out, but making a mistake is a behavioral event, not a character trait. My fundamental worth as a human being is not diminished by this data point.
Precisely. Toxic positivity in a desperate attempt to escape reality. Self-compassion is building a safe, secure anchor within reality.
Wow.
And this structural difference connects to one of the most profound psychological concepts we can explore.
Who is
The vast difference between changing a behavior and truly healing a core wound.
the distinction between changing and healing? Let's map this out mechanically.
Okay. Driven individuals are obsessed with rapid change. We treat ourselves like software that constantly needs optimization.
Right, the newest update.
Yes. You can force a change in a bad habit through sheer willpower. For example, you realize your coping mechanism is spending 3 hours every night doom scrolling on social media.
It ruins your sleep and spikes your anxiety.
So you execute a change. You delete the apps and block the websites.
Sounds like a win.
But because you haven't addressed the underlying anxiety, your brain just seeks a new dopamine delivery system. You replace the scrolling with obsessive online shopping or overexercising. You are still frantically trying to numb out the discomfort. You have merely swapped the specific mechanism of avoidance.
You're just rearranging the furniture in a burning house.
Yes,
The structure is still actively on fire, but you are pointing out that the sofa looks much better by the window now.
exactly. That is the illusion of change.
So what does true healing look like?
True healing requires something that terrifies the driven mind. It requires voluntarily sitting in what psychologists call the liminal space.
The liminal space.
The void, yes. The transitional corridor between what was and what will be.
Why is it so terrifying?
Because healing demands that you allow yourself to exist in that highly uncomfortable, empty space without instantly reaching for a distraction,
Right.
without trying to produce a measurable output, and without trying to aggressively fix the feeling.
Let's give the listener a highly concrete, physical example of what sitting in that liminal space actually looks and feels like in the real world. Think about the concept of taking yourself on a solo date.
Oh, that is one of the most effective exposure therapies for the driven, anxious mind.
It really is. Imagine intentionally taking yourself out to a high-end, busy restaurant on a Friday night.
Just you.
Just you.
Right.
No book to hide behind, no smartphone to scroll through to signal to the room that you are busy and important, no companion to entertain.
Just you in the room.
You walk up to the host stand, ask for a table for one, and you sit down. The initial physiological response is pure panic.
It's physically painful.
Yes, the awkwardness is literally physically painful. Your brain's threat detection system is screaming, everyone is staring at us, we are not being productive, we look pathetic and socially isolated.
You become hyper-aware of every sensory detail.
Every detail, the sharp clinking of silverware on porcelain all around you,
The low, overlapping murmur of other people's effortless conversations.
the condensation slowly dripping down your water glass.
The internal drill sergeant is in absolute chaos because there is no metric for success in this scenario.
Right.
There is no task to excel at. There is nothing to conquer.
Exactly. You are just a biological organism sitting in a chair.
But
if you stay in that seat, if you breathe through the spike in cortisol, if you resist the overwhelming urge to pull out your phone and numb the discomfort,
something mechanical shifts.
it does. The awkwardness eventually burns itself out, the cortisol drops, and what is left underneath that frantic noise is this incredible, expansive, quiet peace.
You experience the profound realization that you can simply enjoy your own company.
Yes, you can taste the complex flavors of the food, you can observe the architectural details of the room, and you don't need to perform a personality for absolutely anyone.
You do not have to be a highly entertaining 10 out of 10 conversationalist.
You just get to exist.
That specific realization, the physical, bodily knowing that you are fundamentally allowed to simply exist without producing value, brings our entire analysis toward its most vital conclusion.
It really does.
Because if we follow this psychological thread all the way to the end, the ultimate objective of understanding these driven profiles, of instituting self-compassion, of surviving the liminal space.
It is a broader philosophical reflection on human potential.
Yes, this is where all the mechanics and the psychology converge into the core truth of the matter.
And what is that truth?
The ultimate objective of your life is not to somehow eventually achieve a flawless, error-free existence.
No.
It is not to finally check every single box on an endless spreadsheet so that the internal drill sergeant finally grants you permission to rest.
So what is the objective?
The ultimate objective is to realize fundamentally that you are already whole.
We spend decades of our lives operating under the delusion that we are incomplete, fragmented pieces of a person, don't we?
Constantly.
We constantly tell ourselves, well, if I just secure this VP title, if I just lose exactly 15 pounds, if I just find the perfectly attuned romantic partner,
Then the equation will balance.
right, then I will finally be complete. But if you look at the etymology, the original philosophical definition of the word perfection, it completely destroys that narrative.
Yes, tracing back to ancient philosophical roots, true perfection does not mean without error.
Right.
It does not describe a flawless, sterile surface with no scratches or dents. The original structural meaning of the word perfection simply means complete.
Complete. I want the listener to really internalize the mechanics of that. Perfection means complete.
It does.
You do not need to acquire or attach anything external to yourself to be worthy of taking up space on this planet.
No.
You do not need to endlessly earn your daily right to exist by being perpetually productive, perfectly organized, or endlessly accommodating to everyone else's nervous system.
You are already complete. You have always been complete.
To cement this paradigm shift, there is a really powerful visual metaphor we can use to replace the old architecture of the driven mind.
It's an excellent metaphor. It requires examining how you spatialize your own identity.
Right.
For years, the highly driven, anxious individual views themselves as a tiny, claustrophobic, forgotten room inside a rundown, dilapidated house.
Yeah.
And you are standing in the center of this tiny room, frantically, desperately running your hands along the wallpaper, searching for the one single correct door that will let you out into a successful life.
It is a state of perpetual panic.
It is.
You are constantly thinking, is the door my next promotion? Is the door a new city? Is the door this specific fitness regimen?
You are terrified that if you pick the wrong door, you will be trapped in the tiny room forever.
But the reality of your psychological makeup is that you are not a tiny room with only one hidden exit.
No. You must reconceptualize yourself as a vast, powerful, ever-changing ocean.
An ocean, a massive dynamic ecosystem.
Exactly. And when you realize you are an ocean, the entire panic of finding the correct door evaporates.
Because there aren't doors in the ocean.
Right. There isn't just one tiny hidden exit. There isn't just one singular correct place to dive into the water.
There are a million entry points.
Yes. There are endless, equally valid ways to configure a life of meaning and satisfaction.
You possess the immense gravitational power of the tides.
The profound, quiet depth of the deep water.
The kinetic energy of the crashing waves.
You are not trapped in a maze requiring a perfect solution. You are entirely expansive.
That reframing changes the entire mechanical structure of how you wake up in the morning.
It fundamentally alters your nervous system.
You aren't waking up with a racing heart, desperately searching for the single correct answer to justify your existence anymore.
No. You are simply exploring the currents of your own waters.
It replaces chronic anxiety with profound curiosity.
And curiosity, mechanically speaking, is the exact opposite of judgment. It is the ultimate pathway to psychological healing.
I think back to that person we placed in the kitchen at the very beginning of this conversation.
Right, the Friday night kitchen.
The person standing there on a Friday night, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, feeling the heavy physical ache of exhaustion in their shoulders.
Staring in the glowing group chat on their phone.
And feeling that cold knot of social guilt. If that person truly internalized that they were an expansive ocean,
They would act very differently.
they would not force themselves to go to that loud, sticky-floored venue at 2 a.m. just to perform a role.
No. They would recognize their biological limits.
They would put on the soft sweatpants, they would turn off the phone,
They would go to sleep.
and most importantly, they would wake up the next morning knowing with absolute unshakable certainty that they had not lost a single ounce of their fundamental worth.
Because they finally understand on a cellular level that their human value isn't a commodity determined by their social attendance.
Or their corporate performance metrics.
Or their hyper-vigilant ability to manage everyone else's expectations.
Precisely. We have mapped out some incredibly dense psychological territory today.
We really have.
From deconstructing the tyranny of the internal drill sergeant and its impossible 10 out of 10 demands, to identifying the specific mechanical wiring of our driven profiles.
Whether you operate as the classic, the intense, the relational, the procrastinator, or the messy.
Right. We analyze the harsh reality of the social mirror, the profound neurological pain of friendship breakups, and the evolutionary superpower of sensory processing sensitivity.
And we landed on the vital, life-saving mechanics of radical self-compassion.
It is crucial to remember that this is an ongoing, active practice. Rewiring neuroplasticity takes time.
It does. The voice of the internal drill sergeant won't magically permanently disappear tomorrow.
But you now possess the exact mechanical tools to recognize it, turn down its volume, and eventually put on those noise-canceling headphones.
Exactly.
And as we close out this analysis, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, highly specific, provocative thought to turn over in your mind as you navigate the rest of your week.
Good one.
It synthesizes everything we have unpacked today, but it brings it right down to the microscopic level of your next interaction with yourself. The very next time you make a mistake, whether you drop a glass and shatter it on the kitchen floor, or you stumble over your words at a high-stakes meeting, or you simply forget to reply to a friend's text.
And you hear that harsh, critical, hyper-vigilant inner voice, immediately launch its attack.
Stop. Manually interrupt the circuit. Pause for just 1 second and ask yourself, would you ever, under any circumstances, speak that viciously to your best friend?
Never.
And if the answer is absolutely not, why are you actively denying yourself the exact same friendship?